welcome to RBC Disruptors. I'm John Stackhouse. It's my pleasure to host our monthly conversation about disruption, innovation, some crazy thinking like you just saw, and how technology is changing the world all around us. This is our now third annual How to Think Like a Startup session, and we're so lucky to have an amazing growth CEO from the Valley here with us today, Jennifer Tejada, CEO of PagerDuty. Jen, welcome to RBC Disruptors.
Thank you for having me.
As you've probably noticed, our other guest, Chris O'Neill, is not here. It's been a long night. Poor Chris is somewhere between Aspen and Denver and in the air. He was locked in Aspen, no hardship there, or Vail was it? And
something
like that, and now he's on a red eye somewhere. So we'll have a few tears for Chris, but he couldn't be here today. But we're so lucky to have Jennifer, and as I said, hear about the great PagerDuty story. It's listed in many publications as one of the Valley's hottest growth companies. And don't take my word for it. Mark Andreessen, when Jennifer became CEO, said adding Jen to PagerDuty is like adding octane to jet fuel. I don't know what that means. What does that?
I don't know. If we have our team were here, you can ask them later. But it was a good company that had an opportunity to go to great. And I sort of think of myself as the chief pace setter in this thing. And when I got to PagerDuty, one of the things we did was just ramp up the velocity of a number of experiments that we were running to try and deliver better outcomes faster. And fortunately, knock on wood, a lot of those experiments have gone really well.
So we're going to talk today about growth mindsets, which is really critical to not just startups and scale-up firms, but to big companies like RBC, and hear from Jen about what is a growth mindset, how do you build it, and how do you develop a culture around that. And for those of you watching on WebEx and Facebook, welcome. Please share your questions with us. We'll get to those on the screen here. And we've got Jennifer for an hour, so lots of time to get into the growth mindset and what's fueling Silicon Valley and some of the world's great entrepreneurs. But Jen, I want to start by stealing Peter Gregory's question. That was episode 2 from season 1, I think, of Silicon Valley. Your company. What is it?
Yeah, what do you do?
What do you do?
I gotta say, I love starting something with a Silicon Valley clip because I stopped watching the show because this is a little too close. You kind of get home at the end of the day and you sort of watch that and like, oh God, I resemble some of that. Or, I saw that before. What does PagerDuty do? We are essentially the de facto real-time platform for action that leverages machine signals and AI to detect an issue, an unplanned issue, something breaking, and orchestrate people to address that issue before a customer feels the pain. So we call that digital operations management. Every business, every brand that each of you interfaces with, it basically relies on a digital experience, a set of digital assets, whether it's a mobile app, something that happens through your PC, et cetera, or your Mac. And when that brand experience is not perfect, you quit, or you delete the app, or you move to another alternative. Ride sharing is a good example. The car takes too long, you just you cancel that, and you move to the other provider, or same thing with food delivery, or you name it, music, et cetera. And our job is to, one, shift people's time, particularly the engineering community, the developers, IT operations, support, et cetera, from chasing unplanned emergencies to being proactive and even getting to preventative actions to ensure these incidents don't happen and they don't ruin your experience, right? And today, the digital experience is the new brand experience. Unfortunately, most of the problem management platforms that are out there were built for a world that's hardware-centric, where you would wait for a customer to burn and raise a ticket, and then you'd put that ticket through a queue, and days and weeks and months would go by until something got resolved, and thousands of people would be coordinated in an organization. If we did that today, everybody would lose market share like all the time. And a company's ability to be hyper responsive in the micro moment that matters is often the difference between being the brand champion or being the distant second. And I think the web, the cloud, big data, mobile, which, by the way, it's still early for mobile. These have all been vehicles to help the startup industry create a lot of hugely disruptive new business models. There isn't an industry that is safe from disruption now because the barriers to entry are so much lower thanks to the cloud and to the ability to reach consumers through digital.
So frame for us your challenge as CEO. You come in a couple of years ago. PagerDuty was started by a Canadian, Alex Solomon.
Yeah, 3 Canadians.
But they're bringing you in because something's not going quite right.
There's a really special story there. In most cases, what happens in a Silicon Valley or any startup is the founder gets going, things are going well for a while, and then the business sort of outgrows the founder, so to speak, and things start to go badly, and then the board pushes the founder out and brings in a new, hired gun, and that rarely works, right? And in the case of PagerDuty, we had the great fortune of having 3 co-founders who are very humble and very thoughtful, and Alex Solomon, who was running the business at the time I joined in particular, not only recognized that he didn't have the experience to scale the business through its next growth cycle, but was able to put the company ahead of his own interests in a way that very few people can. Particularly, when you're the CEO and you're the founder and it's your baby and you're used to being the boss. Imagine giving your job away and working for somebody else. And Alex having that recognition and that self-awareness, and then really driving and leading the charge to find a leader for the business, made the ability to have a graceful transition, that opportunity exist. And the board got behind him and helped him find the right kind of leader. And hopefully people still think I'm the right leader for PagerDuty. But
what are they
we've
looking
had a
for
real
when you say
partnership.
the right kind of leader?
I think one was experience. So one of the challenges, PagerDuty will be 10 years old next year. It was really Alex's second job. His first job was working at Amazon and as an engineer in the Amazon.com procurement solution part of the business. And imagine every morning when you wake up for work and you get a set of new problems that you've never seen before, have no experience managing, no pattern recognition, et cetera, from how to know what you need to hire, how to assess talent, how to prioritize, how to set goals, what does the finance organization look like, how should I think about regulatory compliance, how do I build product? Just every day, everything is new. It's overwhelming and super stressful. And so I think they were looking for someone who had experience, had a strong product orientation, was someone who would not only fit into the culture, because PagerDuty has this beautiful, wonderful, special culture, but really develop that culture over time, but somebody who wants to win, and somebody who could build a highly talented team and really help the company live up to its potential.
So we're going to talk about that culture, the culture of winning, but it's about much more than winning. First, growth mindset.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about growth and why it matters.
I grew up going to school like everybody else does, and you sort of sit in class, and the objective is to get the right answer, to have the right answer, to be the person with the right answer, et cetera. And I think we sort of instill in people that if you're going to be a leader, you need to know everything. You need to know more than everybody else. You need to be smarter than everybody else. And that's just complete bull. Am I allowed to swear here? Bull. You know what it is. I'm going to have to, this is going to be hard.
You Americans have changed the rules of rhetoric lately, so
yes.
You can say whatever you want.
Okay, awesome. I do not want to be lumped in. Okay, so what's interesting for me is I'm a constant learner. I am motivated by how steep the learning curve is, not by money, not by power. I was like, can I get into something where I can just be learning every day and trying new things? That's what makes me happy. And it's allowed me to be more of a learn-it-all than a know-it-all. And Mark and Rads and the team here, I'm constantly asking them questions like, what should I do? What do you want me to do? Et cetera, which is a little unusual because a lot of leaders feel like they have to know everything. And a growth mindset is about being open and being humble enough to ask others for their expertise and not have to, reinvent fire all the time, right? And so what I love about the growth mindset and the culture that's really grown in the Valley, a great example is if I have a big problem or I'm trying to figure something out that's strategically critical for the business, one of the first things I'll do is call 4 or 5 CEOs that I know, some of which are kind of competitive or adjacent to us or a little bit ahead of us, and I'll be super candid about the challenge that I'm working on to give them enough context to help me, and then ask them, like, what did you do? Like, what did you learn? What did you screw up, et cetera. 20 years ago, we didn't do that. We kept all of our problems really, quiet and secret, and, tried to put on this perfect facade. And that growth mindset, that openness to hearing how other people would address a problem or how they thought about the problem or what they've tried before, et cetera, saves you a lot of time. It allows you to avoid bad experiments and really focus on the most important experiments where you can learn the most. And equally, I think it just accelerates your ability to attempt new things that can move a business faster.
We were talking off stage about an idea that you might call the growth card or the growth mindset card being candor, ambition, resilience, and diversity, which you'd find in probably every really good, fast-growing company. So maybe we can walk through those 4 descriptions of your culture. Start with candor. How do you develop and enhance a truly candid culture?
I mean, part of it is leading by example, like being radically candid in front of people, being willing to fail in front of people. I ask stupid questions all the time in front of people, but I'm also...
What was the last stupid question you asked in front of...
what is this? Like, we were in a product meeting, I'm like, I don't get it. What is that? What do you... And they said, well, it's this event intelligence, it does this. I'm like, yeah, but what is it? Like, what's in it? How does it work? Like, what's special about it? And so then they have to go into layman's terms, and you can see like half the new people in the room was like, oh my God, I don't think she understands technology. This is a tech company. And then they realize, sort of turns out, oh, actually, she does kind of get it, but she wants us to articulate it, right? And because I have to then go out and articulate, like, what is it everywhere I go? And I think by me asking that question in front of people, I ask a question that often other people are afraid to ask. I learned that, like, when you're a new employee somewhere, you kind of have the license to ask the stupid newbie questions for a little while. So I just pretended to be new for my entire career. And that candor gives everybody else the freedom to be inquisitive and in a non-judgmental way, I hope. I also think giving people candid feedback on how things are going, there's a mindset in some camps that, like, the chief executive officer is also the chief cheerleader, and to some extent, yeah, it is my job to motivate people, but not by telling them they look really pretty and they're super smart and I'm so proud of you. I'm not your mom. My job is to drive performance in this business. So I think about candor in terms of being super transparent about what our goals are, and then making sure that we have the machinery so that everybody in the business understands how we're tracking, how we're progressing against those goals. And if something's not working, like, we are going to talk about, like, what's not working. But we're not going to blame people in that process. Because we believe in the concept of blameless post-mortems and high empathy learning. So when something goes wrong, I don't go, Mark, are you the one who screwed that up? Like, because Mark will then never tell me what actually happened, and we won't learn from that process. When we blow up our infrastructure and have a big incident, we run a post-mortem, and there's no attacks on people. There's no even subtle blaming. It's really about, like, everybody is collectively trying to learn, so we're that much better in the next 5 hours or 5 months or 5 weeks. And so also this idea of being very empathetic and understanding the perspective of the person failing or making the mistake so that you can quickly move on from that failure and learn. And every morning when I wake up, I know there's a group of people failing in the business. I can often see it, and I will try and be direct about what I think maybe some of the challenges are, but I have to stand back and let them learn.
Talk a bit more about this idea of blameless post-mortems.
Yeah.
How do you run them?
So we have a very structured process. One thing PagerDuty does when there is an incident that takes place, the PagerDuty platform consumes the timeline of everything that actually happened during the detection, triage, and remediation process, which is sort of like the fact pattern, and allows the team to go and review not just what they thought happened, under time pressure. And usually these incidents are, how many of you tried to buy something on Amazon Prime and had a little trouble? Like, just imagine the hundreds of people running around in the background trying to address that while you were getting super peeved about not being able to buy your Echo or your Adidas or whatever, really mission critical purchase that you wanted to make. Once the fire is out, right, that does not mean the root cause has actually been addressed. So as soon as the fire is out and you've returned to sort of normal business as usual, the team gets together, looks at that timeline, and really kind of runs the postmortem or the retrospective to understand, what happened, what did we do, what could we have done differently, what did we learn, what do we need to do now, what are the explicit action items, and who are the owners coming out of that. And nowhere in that discussion is, how did Mark fat finger that code that went into the Kafka cluster that screwed this whole thing up, right? Because if we do that, Mark is never going to tell us the truth, right, about what's going on. And by the way, Mark is the account manager for RBC, so if anybody needs anything, he's right here, right? But I think it's really all about shifting the mindset from, we used to think that, like, if someone is accountable, then when something goes wrong, it's their head on a platter, right? But that mindset, that's the opposite of a growth mindset, by the way. That mindset actually stymies the institutional learning in a business. And so Blameless Post-Mortems, Blameless Retrospectives, really a focus on collective learning and the whole organization moving forward, which is a much higher order value for a business and for the end customer than, like, making that one person feel terrible.
Talk a bit more about ambition, because it's fine to have a good culture, but you're growing like crazy.
Yeah.
Up to 100% a year, and you've got insane targets for your teams. That's what your investors expect of you. That's probably what you expect. You want, and they want. How do you really establish and instill that ambitious culture?
Yeah, I mean, to be a CEO in a high growth company, you have to be, part insane, part courageous, super optimistic kind of all the time, and a really good problem solver, and a good leader, right? I mean, those are all the things that sort of come together, and you have to have a vision. And so part of my job is to articulate a vision that is approachable and consumable for every single person in our business. And when I got to PagerDuty, one of the things that was really interesting was we had this, like, high empathy, amazing, like, high EQ, humble culture, but, like, we acted like we were the, like, distant fifth place player in a category we freaking created and we're the leader in. And so even just instilling the mindset of a leader in the business and getting people to claim their success in some ways was a challenge at the beginning because of how humble we are. Like, and the great thing about being humble is that we're always trying to get better, which is one of the things I like, just the drive for continuous improvement, that, like, good is never good enough. We want to be great at what we do. We want a perfect experience for our customers. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves collectively to do that. But that also means that, like, you have to stop and celebrate the success. And in my view, success breeds success. When people feel and taste winning, it makes you want to win again. It doesn't make you want to go home and take a nap, right? And so for me, creating a sense of ambition for the company was about articulating this vision of how we could change the world, how we could return time back to people. I personally believe time is the most valuable currency in our society. You might have thought it was Bitcoin, but it's not. And anything that we can do to return time to individuals and to teams to enable them to focus on the work that really matters, on the mission critical, purposeful work that they came to RBC to do, or they came to PagerDuty to do, then we're helping them win every day. And so it was about painting that vision, and then it's about not accepting a mediocre performance. So we are a company that sets audacious goals, and then we beat them, and then we raise them, and then we set another audacious goal, we beat them, and we raise them. And by the way, that can be a little exhausting. I always tell people, like, there's no first class comfortable seat on the rocket ship. Like, be prepared to get bumped around. Some people might blow out the window by accident. Like, this is not going to be an easy, comfortable ride, but we are going to change the world while we're at it, and we're going to have a great time doing it. So, and I think the other part of ambition is just leading by example. Again, like my dad used to say, wired, fired, never tired. You know, like that you get up in the morning and that's how you approach your day. And if you're not feeling 100%, then you should be doing something else, right? And you have a choice every morning when you get up to spend your day. So I love my job. When I come to PagerDuty, it is a joyful experience for me. I've been looking forward to this trip to Toronto for months, literally months, because there's so many exciting things happening in this market. We just opened a new office. This is one of our biggest hiring platforms. Some of our strongest culture as a company, I think, is here in Toronto. Our most brilliant engineers are here. We have many brilliant engineers in San Francisco as well, but we have just a terrific team of people here. We have our second PagerDuty rock band that I'm going to see for the first time today. So like, I love this market, and I think when you love what you do, ambition just sort of comes with it. But I want to win. We created a category. We're going to disrupt other categories, and get in our way at your peril.
So we're going to come back to the Canadian opportunity. This is a really interesting idea, though, about humble ambition. And I wonder if you can connect that to resilience, sort of the R&R card. We've talked about fail fast. It's become such a kind of cheapened cliche. How do you help your culture be resilient to test and to fail and to learn from failure?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, resilience takes a lot of meaning and form in our business, because part of what we do as a company is we are up and we are the eyes and the ears and the orchestration when everything else in the world is down. When there are big external failures, people look to PagerDuty to help them understand what's happening and to orchestrate the work to quickly get back to the perfect or business as usual state. And so we place a lot of pressure on ourselves and hold ourselves to an extremely high standard around resiliency at scale, being available, so that we constantly and continually build trust with our customers. And our customers return that trust back to us all the time by helping us get tougher and stronger, et cetera. So resiliency has a technical meaning in our business, which means when we build updates, when we make changes to our environment, we always do them in production. We have no maintenance windows. We are a 24/7 high-performing infrastructure-centric organization, and we look to set goals that are well above any industry standard because we believe our customers expect that and deserve that. From a people perspective, resiliency is all about allowing teams to try new things and fail. When we fail, we learn from them. Sometimes we even celebrate the big failures. Like we still celebrate the great incident of 2017. We learned a lot from that, and it was a day where we had quite a long disruption.
Talk us through it and what you learned.
Yeah, we were not down, but we had a long disruption, and we had people working hours and hours to try and address an issue that was delaying information from getting to our customers, mission critical information from getting to our customers. And imagine this scenario where you're just sweating people in rooms trying to problem solve. And cloud-based infrastructure is like a live organism. You change one thing, you have to see what impact that change has. You change another thing, you see what impact that change has. You can't possibly know or understand every service dependency in this technical organism or this ecosystem. And so there's a lot of experimentation on the fly, while in the back of your mind as a problem solver, your customer's burning, right? Things are not they're not having the experience they deserve. And meanwhile, imagine if your exec team is also breathing down your back and yelling at you from a distance, which is what often happens in these cases, not a PagerDuty. There is no executive swoop and poop in the incident command room. There was once, I learned not to do that. But when that's happening, we also have to organize our entire company around what is our corporate response? What are we telling our customers? How are we thinking about what's happening, in social media? So for instance, in our world, developers, they don't send you an email or raise a ticket or call customer support. They just tweet mean, angry things about you. Because you're screwing up their day, and these are gifted, And in the case of PagerDuty, often when we have an instance, one of the things I learned from this particular event was many of our customers sent us #HugOps, and things like, hey, we see PagerDuty's having a bad day, if there's anything I can do to help. Those were the kinds of tweets we're getting. That's empathy getting returned to you from your community, right? After that incident, we published, and you can go see this on our blog, we published publicly the entire post-mortem. And we are super transparent when we screw something up. Oftentimes big incidents are self-inflicted. In this case, there was a mix of self-infliction and some stuff that was outside of our control. But we published that entire post-mortem so the whole community can learn from our mistake. And that's an example of failing in public for everybody else's benefit. Now, if I had $1 for every lawyer who told me what a stupid idea that is, I probably wouldn't still be working. Well, I probably would, but you're taking a risk by sharing your failure, but we think that risk has a huge community payoff that's on a much higher order than any risk that the business undertakes.
That's such a great insight, because too many people see failure as an individual action, and failure requires it takes a village to fail. And it's usually more than an individual, more than an organization. And smart startups and smart big firms know that they're part of someone else's failure, and they should learn from it, but return that empathy. What can large organizations learn from what you're learning in terms of resilience and failure?
I think.
How do we work better with you when you're stumbling?
Yeah, well, I think one thing is you need to empower people in your organization to make the big decisions. So I started my career at Procter & Gamble. I grew up in a militaristic command and control centric environment where at the time John Pepper made all the big decisions, and there were some lieutenants that executed the work, and information that came up, big decision gets made, gets cascaded back down, et cetera. In a real-time micro-moment world, that kind of management system or leadership system just doesn't work anymore. So you need to empower people closest to your customers, closest to the facts, closest to the information, where the action is, to make the biggest decisions and reward them when they go well and reward them when they fail and learn, right? And that really is, that's really part of lean and agile concept, and it's also core to DevOps culture, right? High empathy, huge empowerment to the individual, emphasis on continuous learning for the whole organization. But it is hard to do. It is really hard as a leader to watch from a distance something very close when you did that 20 years ago and the right way to do that, right? To let that go. So there's a lot of letting go. And then there's also how do I make investments as a leader that equip all of our people to make the best decisions, to be able to try things. And we have our growth marketing team right now just all got trained and certified in Agile, and everything we do from a digital perspective is done in sprints. And it's been super freeing in terms of creativity, and there's also just been a lot of crazy stuff that hasn't worked so good in this environment, and we're learning from it. But talk about empowering people, you don't have to go get approval from the head of marketing or from Rebecca to push something out from a web perspective, right? Which means, we can go really fast, but we could also screw up really fast, And so that sort of empowerment, I think, is a double-edged sword, and you have to be prepared to, when there's a mistake, when something goes wrong, to go, okay, all right, we've made that mistake. What do we learn from it? What are we going to do differently?
So the D in our growth card is diversity, and PagerDuty is celebrated and studied now for a very different approach to diversity, and love you to expand on it. But bear in mind, one of the things that bothered me about the Silicon Valley video, as funny as it is the sole female character in it is such a negative caricature, which we all sort of now view as the Valley's view of gender and lack of diversity. Help us understand what PagerDuty is trying to do, what you've instilled, and what you're still up against.
Yeah. Look, I've had a very fortunate career. I was saying to John earlier, I was always the person that walked into a room and there was nobody in that room that looked anything like me. So I was like the purple squirrel, at the zoo. And I just sort of thought that that's how it is. It didn't occur to me that difference was a bad thing, and in fact, sometimes it was a good thing. My dad coached me early to leverage my difference as an opportunity. Like sometimes I stand out more, so that creates a platform. I get more attention, so I have the opportunity to be heard, et cetera. So one, we try and think about diversity and difference as upside, not downside. And two, like diversity and inclusion is just good business. Like there's just no question, not just in my mind, but from a research perspective, all the data points to better business outcomes, better results, better shareholder returns, better customer offerings, et cetera, if you have a diverse workforce, period. Like the facts are there. And diversity is not a women's problem or a men's problem or a people of color problem or a lifestyle diversity problem. It is a leadership problem. It is a business problem. And so from my perspective, I saw PagerDuty as a platform to prove that taking an innovative approach and demanding diversity and inclusion in a business will drive better performance. And we will prove everybody who says it's too hard, there's no pipeline, those people don't exist, they don't like tech, blah, 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 that they're just wrong, that those are all just excuses.
So 50% of your engineering team, as I understand it. And
50% of our engineering leadership team are female. Yeah. 65% of my leadership team was born outside the US. Half of the executive leadership team are female. We have a very rich, diverse culture that you really see come to life in our employee resource groups, which are sister duty. You can imagine what that is, veteran duty. There's rainbow duty. They're one of my favorites. I marched in San Francisco Pride with the rainbow duty crew recently. We have Array, which is our people of color. There are a few more. I can't even keep track of them. We fund every one of these resource groups, and not only are they driving learning across the whole organization, when you go to a sister duty meeting, half the room's men. Like, these are not like secret clubs.
What does Sister Duty?
So Sister Duty is a women's resource group, and it's really about driving understanding and creating opportunities and promoting learning and education to help women be successful, period. We also have operationalized a number of programs in our hiring process, in our performance management process, in our promotion process, et cetera. So to make sure that not only do we continually improve the diversity of our business, but we also maintain the diversity of our business. So when I came into the business, I said, I want to see where we are from a parity perspective in terms of pay equity standpoint. And someone said to me, that's going to be really hard. That's going to take a long time. We have a lot of things to do. We need to hire 200 people. I said, I don't care. Like, give me the data, right? So change has to come from the top. You have to demand that, you have to demand a diverse and inclusive culture.
What did you learn from the data?
So what I learned was we were not on par. And it took us about 7 months through a lot of calibration, 2 performance management cycles, and a lot of hiring new people to get to equal pay within 1%, job for job, every job at PagerDuty.
And what was going on before?
Oh, I mean, just like imagine you're hiring engineers and you've got more males coming in the pipeline and they're good engineers, and every time you hire 3 engineers and 1 woman, like the thing just tilts and you're paying market value, and you're 1 engineer who's a rock star who's above, sort of above the sort of median pay, and you push everybody else down. So it's 1, just having awareness about where you stand, and 2, making a commitment to get to equity, so to progress, and then 3, constantly measuring it to make sure once you do get to gender pay equity, you don't fall behind. Because every time we go through big hiring cycles, we have to look and go, okay, wait a minute, what just happened in the balance, right? And we've just started with gender. Like, there are a whole bunch of other classes that we need to look at. So we're by no means done, but again, it was like an example of proving that this can be done. And it can be done, in a venture-backed company. We're currently not profitable, so we have to invest people's time and systems to do this. I'd also say that it's important to start early. So if you have a new org or a new team, or while you're still growing, it's easiest to change the shape of your gender equity or your pay equity. It gets harder as your headcount growth flattens. But you can still do it through calibration and performance management and leadership. The other thing that we did is, if your leadership teams don't look balanced, you have no hope in hell of the organizations underneath them achieving balance. And then a lot of people talk about the Rooney Rule. Are you familiar with the Rooney Rule? So the Rooney Rule was created by an NFL general manager, last name Rooney, who basically created a rule within their organization, because there were very few women in the NFL at the time, that on every recruiting slate, every final candidate slate, there had to be one female. The challenge with that is most slates are 3 to 4 people, right? If there's one, you have about a 0% chance of that one person winning the job. So we expect every one of our final candidate slates to be half underrepresented minorities, because we know there are at least 2 of 4 final candidates that are underrepresented. We have a 51% chance or greater of one of those candidates getting through. Now, we still have a very high standard for every role that we hire, and sometimes our recruiting processes take longer because that slate has to be balanced before we will make a decision. And we still have some areas, our sales organization is woefully unbalanced. So we've got a women in sales organization that we're working on. We are asking recruiters explicitly for diverse candidates. We won't work with recruiters that don't demonstrate the ability to connect us to diverse communities. And all that's great, and that helps you with the inbound pipeline. But then you have to have an inclusive organization that people want to work in. So, if I come into the office in my dress and my Pradas and everybody's wearing t-shirts and hoodies, oh God, that's every day. Do I really feel welcome? Do I really feel like I belong, right? And so I think it's also really important that you're honest with yourself and say, this candidate, when they come in for their first day of work orientation, are they gonna see a reflection of themselves in the culture, right? And if they don't, how are we going to celebrate them and embrace them and ensure that they're successful and feel a sense of belonging? And so inclusiveness is not just about diversity, it's about every single person in your business having an equal opportunity to kill it.
And as you said, you've gone slow on a lot of hiring, as I understand it. There's often vacancies in the organization as a result. How do you balance that with the growth challenge? Because your investors want you to be hitting those ambitious targets.
Yeah, well, the good news is, really good rule of thumb if you're a manager is hire slow, fire fast, right? There's only a certain amount of new headcount any organization can consume at any point in time. And a lot of these unicorns that sort of tip over are ones that hire super fast and can't keep track of the quality and can't onboard people effectively, and then end up in a position where performance, suffers. And so having things take a little longer and putting a little more rigor around the candidates that we're hiring has actually, I think, been a net positive for the business. And it also forces us to think about how our teams become more efficient, and frankly also how we build career architectures for our existing people. A lot of people go straight to hiring when we talk about diversity, but frankly, I'd like to just keep all the awesome people I have. And people are worried about Trump's trade war. I'm worried about the Silicon Valley talent war. I mean, it's why we're investing so heavily in Toronto and always have.
So great questions here from WebEx and Facebook that I want to get to. First is, what advice do you give to women tech leaders?
I mean, the good news is right now, because of the Me Too movement and learning from some of the terrible things that have happened in the Valley, women are in the spotlight. And I have a lot of female leaders that ask me, I got an opportunity, but I think it's kind of a quota, sort of tick the box thing. It really pisses me off that's why I'm being asked. And my response to them is, take that opportunity and go kick ass, right? I mean, for years, men and gentlemen have been trading favors to get into roles and jobs and get promoted in industries. Why should women shy away from opportunity no matter how it came to them, whether it came to them through someone setting a quota, or I get called all the time about board seats, and it's usually a situation where I would be the only woman on the board. And I can't take any more board seats, I'm kind of busy. But what I will do is I have an Excel spreadsheet of amazing underrepresented minority candidates and middle-aged white male candidates, by the way, who I love. And I will understand the profile of what they're looking for and refer. So there's also a pay it forward effect, right? But whether you're a female leader or you're a black leader or you're a purple leader or you're a transgender leader, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's what does that business need, and what do you bring, and how do you articulate your value proposition to the business, and then who do you need? What support group, what network do you need to get the position that you want. And so the other thing I often say to leaders is ask for help, like build an entire support team. No one does the Tour de France without a support team. Like go get your support team in place and get help. Tell everybody you know what you want in your career, because somebody's gonna call one of those everybody's and say, hey, I'm looking for somebody who looks like this, does this, has this talent, has had this experience, and you want your name to float when that happens.
That's great insight. Another WebEx question here on how large organizations like RBC, or you mentioned Procter & Gamble, can develop a better growth mindset.
I think a lot of organizations are doing really neat things with entrepreneurship, and you don't have to be in a startup to think and act and deliver like an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs, most of us, I think, play the long game. Like we have a long-term vision. Every morning, someone challenges my vision, and your employees in particular will continue to test your vision, and you just have to keep repeating yourself over and over again, because they're not just testing your vision, they're testing your conviction around that vision. And so if you've got an idea that's blossoming inside of RBC or inside of a big company, a whole bunch of people are going to tell you why the machine will kill it, right? Or why you'll never be able to get that done. Well, that's every morning for breakfast for me. So, you just got to keep running up against that and demonstrate to people that you're convicted and you're not going to give up. And eventually that actually becomes contagious. And you sort of create this movement, right? The other thing is social media works inside too, not just outside. So build that following of support by being your best PR and social media machine, whether you use Slack or you use Microsoft, or if you pick your poison, you've got a way to communicate with your whole organization in one way or another and build a campaign, right?
That's great. What's your conviction and what's your campaign?
Yeah.
That's what we should all be thinking about. Another question here on AI. How are you utilizing massive data sets, and how is AI changing, and how will it change your business?
So AI has been changing our business for the last couple of years in a meaningful way. So we collect data, 10 years of data on some really interesting things. All of the events, so anything that is software enabled, whether it's the infrastructure stack, the app stack, every device you ever touch that's connected to the cloud, people information, et cetera, we absorb those machine signals. And the number of services that produce data and devices that produce data is proliferating at a rate you can't even imagine. So that signal set is just massive. And there's a lot of correlation and understanding and insight that comes from those signals. For example, seeing a bunch of signals together storming that look like they're going to become a major incident before there is an incident. Seeing many customers experience the same challenge and knowing that there must be a common service before AWS publishes that something's gone wrong, right? Or a massive security attack or a DDoS attack, for instance, on a service. So really understanding the signals that are out there and using AI to build models and learn on those signals so that humans don't have to try and understand the context and the correlation of what's happening. Then there's the people. How do responders behave under certain conditions? What happens when they experience certain workflows? Why are some teams far more productive than others? Why are some individuals really good at solving big, hairy problems and others are not? So applying behavioral data against machine data and going beyond just orchestrating work, but like finding their best person for the most important opportunity in the second that it matters. And then finally, there's the workflow. Like, why in 40 teams across a Fortune 10 organization do 30 teams see 50% improvement year over year for 5 years and 10 teams don't? What is it about those teams, their workflow, that's different, right? So all of that can be done through AI. Some of the simplest examples of where we're using AI is, you have a problem. We've seen this problem before. Here's exactly what you did last time. Press this radio button to run that solve. That didn't work. Here, we're paging this person that solved it last time, right? So you're just compressing the amount of effort that humans have to undertake to get to the solution. I'm even more excited about how what we've learned about ops translates to opportunity. So in our marketing organization, we consume machine signals from things like Adobe Marketing Cloud or Google Analytics, and we see traffic surges. And when traffic or conversion's surging, we orchestrate people, content and growth marketers, growth hackers we call them, to get in and serve offers quickly in the moment when traffic has turned up. There's nothing more frustrating for a leader than getting the Tuesday demand gen report that tells you last week web traffic increased on Friday. It's over, people. Like, I want people in there in the moment when that opportunity exists. So this idea of a real-time platform for action, it only works if you can consolidate information really quickly, get to an insight, drive an action, automate as much of that action as possible, so people are left with the most important work. Like, my dream from an incident, my geeky incident management dream, is that one day the last point of escalation is calling a human. The humans are all quietly working on really important, mission-critical, visionary stuff for the future, and they only get called after everything else, after the machine has tried everything else to resolve an issue. And the number of times that they're needed is less and less and less over time, even though infrastructures and companies are getting more and more complex every day.
You mentioned a bit earlier your ambitions for Canada. Maybe you can just briefly tell us what you're looking to do.
Well, I heart Canada. I'm from Minnesota. I'm trying to become an honorary Canadian. I feel like I'm getting close, yeah. But no. So again, we were founded by three guys that graduated from Waterloo. We've had a phenomenal relationship with Waterloo. We're I think the leading company in their intern rotation. I love our interns from Waterloo because they come ready to work and we put them on real work. Like, they don't go to a movie once a week. In fact, we probably could improve how programmatic we are about taking care of our interns, when they're in. But they come and they're actually employees doing real work, real stuff, touching live code in their first or second day at work. And we feel like we've been able to punch above our weight at universities like Waterloo because the whole of Silicon Valley is not swimming around in there. They're all busy at Stanford and Berkeley and Cal Poly. And so, one, it's been about the pool of talent in this particular market, and Waterloo is just one example. Two, it's also been about the ability to build a phenomenal cross-functional team. So we've been able to find great senior leaders in this market. We've been in this market for 9 years. We have been able to expand from having a pure engineering technology workforce here to having a cross-functional workforce, which meant we bring the ethos of the customer into the culture in the office every day. And I think that's helped our engineers have a different perspective on who they're building product for and what those people need. And equally, it's helped our salespeople understand what goes into delivering the roadmap. But I think that Canada, beyond the subsidies and the help the Canadian government gives you if you invest in research in this market, the people, just the work ethic, the culture, this is really well suited to our company culture. And we've made this, again, as I mentioned, our priority hiring hub for all of our global markets. We have offices in San Francisco, Sydney, London, and Toronto. We're hiring on about a 3-to-1 basis here. We're at 400 employees, and we're about at 125, 130 here in Toronto. And we just moved into an office where we can grow to 250. So it's been a terrific market from a people and an employment perspective. There's also a huge business opportunity here. So there are companies like RBC and Rogers, et cetera, that because you don't have access necessarily to a global infrastructure, et cetera. Like, I find that, and I found this when I lived in Australia, that Canadians are super innovative and that you have to build a lot of things yourself because you can't just reach over to somebody down the road in the valley and get it. And so I've been very impressed with even the AI effort inside of RBC, for instance. So there's also a really great exchange of ideas. Dave, who I'll see later today, the CEO here, and I just get on these creative riffs when we're together. And he really is a technology leader. He reminds me of every other, software CEO that I know. He's nicer than the ones. Way nicer. I love Canada nice. And I think that he's actually trying to drive a lot of industry-centric change here. So, and I also believe in being part of something that's on the, that's on the up, that's accelerating to greatness, as opposed to being at the top of its game and trying to stay there. And so I feel like there's still so much potential in Canada, and I want to be part of that growth story.
That's a great message. It's so easy to see why Jennifer is celebrated in the Valley as one of the great growth leaders. As a token of our appreciation, we make a donation on behalf of our guests at RBC Disruptors, and Jennifer has chosen an organization called SightLife, which has a goal of eradicating corneal blindness by 2040, I think it is. Tell us a bit more about SightLife and why you chose it.
Yeah, so I love to see customers, so I'm going to see some customers while I'm here, but I like to see customers because I like to hear their stories. I like to hear the problems that they're trying to solve that maybe have nothing to do with PagerDuty, the mission that they're on, because it sort of juices my creative brain for what we should be doing next and where the market's moving and where we should be going. And SightLife is one of those customers that just has a phenomenal story. When we heard about them, we thought, oh, they must be using PagerDuty to keep their back end up and running, et cetera. Well, no. Here's what happens. When someone passes away and they are a corneal donor, they've agreed to donate their eyes, you have exactly 72 hours to identify that donor, get to that donor, harvest those corneas, the retinas, get them to a recipient, and get them transplanted before they can't be used, before they become ineligible. And they use PagerDuty to manage that entire real-time orchestration. The signal, the detection that there is a donor available, where that donor is, orchestrating the right healthcare experts to get to the place they need to go to do the harvesting, getting the recipient ready in whatever location they're in. And by the way, it doesn't work that like a person who needs a new retina is down the road from the donor who makes them available. They're usually on opposite ends of the world. And so we loved that this is a story where PagerDuty is being leveraged in a higher order way for good. And yes, it also makes this particular entity more operationally efficient, et cetera. But at the end of the day, it means that there is less waste. There are more people having their site restored. And to me, that is just really touching and helped our employees really understand the mission that we're on as well. It's a super approachable story. I think many of us take Sight for granted because we were born with it. It just works all the time. I mean, I think my team takes the cloud and internet connection for granted. Like when it doesn't work, like it's like a massive emergency on Slack, right? When the web goes down or the internet goes down, the Wi-Fi goes down. But like in this case, giving someone the gift of sight by managing those micro moments super efficiently and super effectively, I think is incredible. And talk about an ambitious, audacious organization. Like this is a very hard problem. Like there are so many obstacles in the way of them being successful. So it's another just example of where I think we can commit to the community and help them improve. And we have made a pretty big commitment to the community in PagerDuty.org. So we agreed almost 2 years ago to donate 1% of our equity. We took what's called the 1% pledge. So we donate 1% of our equity, 1% of our product, and 1% of our employees' time. The Toronto employees recently built a home with Habitat for Humanity here this summer, July 4th, in fact. And that's, again, something that's kind of unheard of for a late-stage private company to donate 1% of its high-value equity to a foundation for good. But I think it says a lot about who we are and how ambitious we are in wanting to change the world.
That's a great story, and one of the many things I take away from this conversation is how PagerDuty is restoring value to time, and you're doing that with SightLife as well, which is wonderful. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us at RBC Disruptors. Thanks to everyone in the audience and on WebEx and Facebook for joining us as well. Please mark your calendars. August 21st is the next RBC Disruptors. It's going to be exclusively for summer students here because we're talking to the next gen of entrepreneurs, working with Next Canada to bring them in. We'll share this conversation on our podcast. Follow us on social media and connect for more details. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks. You.